The diner was dead silent. The power was out. I clicked on my flashlight, aiming the beam at the corner stool where the strange customer had been sitting just seconds ago. He was gone. But his coffee mug was still smoking on the counter. Then, from the back hallway, a loud thud echoed. The wood of the bathroom door began to split, and the girl inside started screaming. There are rules for working the night shift in the Appalachians, and tonight, the mountain is going to show you why. Hello, loves. I hope you've got the doors locked, and you're not listening alone. Welcome to Madam Nightmare. No matter how hard I used to scrub the floor by the jukebox, it always smelled like sour milk and bleach. It was almost 3 a.m. The neon sign outside was buzzing so loud it was giving me a headache, competing with the freezing November rain hitting the big front windows. I was scraping burnt grease off the flat-top grill with a putty knife, mostly just looking for something to do. The interstate was miles back. Out here on Route 219, where the road just twists through the mountain ridges, you never got anyone after midnight unless they were drunk or lost. Then the little brass bell over the door jingled. A guy walked in. I hadn't seen a car pull up on the highway. He was soaking wet, his greasy hair stuck to his forehead, wearing a denim jacket that looked like it had been sitting in a laurel bog. He didn't even look at the menu. He just slouched down on the corner stool right by the register.
Coffee,
he said. He kept his head down. His knuckles were all raw and split open, dripping a little bit of blood onto the counter. Regular or decaf? I asked. I stayed a few feet back.
Black.
I poured it out of the pot. My hand was shaking enough that I spilled a few drops. When I reached out with a rag to wipe it up, he looked up real fast. His eyes were totally bloodshot, yellow around the rims and wide. Just wide and staring.
You got a phone back there?
His voice sounded like gravel. Just the landline under the register, I lied. My cell phone was sitting right next to the toaster, but no way was I telling them that.
Good,
he said. He took a sip of the hot coffee, didn't even blink, and then just stared back out at the dark, empty mountain road. We sat there in that awful silence for 5 minutes. Just the rain outside and his wet boots dripping onto the floor tiles. Then the doorbell rang again, real hard. A girl practically threw herself inside. She didn't have shoes on, just white socks, totally ruined and black with mountain mud. She had on a big yellow raincoat and was breathing so hard she couldn't get her words out.
Lock it,
she sobbed, grabbing the edge of a booth so she wouldn't fall over.
Please, just lock the door.
Hey, what's wrong? I started coming around the counter, my stomach dropping.
There's a truck. He blocked me in on the dirt logging road down by the run.
She screamed, looking back out the glass toward the pitch-black woods.
He smashed my window. I ran through the ditch. He's right behind me.
Before I could even reach for the deadbolt, the guy on the stool slowly turned around. He looked at the girl, then at me, and this slow, ugly grin spread across his face. It wasn't a movie smile. It was the look of someone who just realized they got exactly what they wanted.
I told you,
the guy whispered. His voice was completely flat.
The mountain roads are bad tonight.
The girl looked at him, realized he was already inside, and let out this noise that still bothers me when I think about it. She didn't stay to talk. She bolted down the hallway toward the bathrooms in the back. Right then, the whole diner went dead. The neon stopped buzzing. The overhead lights flickered twice and shut off, leaving the whole place pitch black, except when lightning flashed over the ridge outside. The storm must have finally knocked out the transformer down the mountain. "Hey!" I yelled, reaching under the counter for the heavy flashlight I kept by the register. "Stay right there." I clicked the light on. The beam hit the corner stool. The guy was gone. The coffee mug was still smoking on the counter, but the stool was empty. Then, from the back hallway, I heard a loud thud like a shoulder hitting a door, and the girl started screaming from inside the women's bathroom. I didn't even think. I grabbed the heavy cast iron skillet off the stove, gripped the flashlight, and ran down the hall. The light caught him. He was throwing his weight against the bathroom door, the wood splitting around the lock. He heard me, spun around, and the flashlight hit a rusted folding knife in his hand. He didn't say anything. He just lunged and swung the blade at me. I swung the skillet with everything I had. It hit him right on the side of the jaw with a loud crack. He hit the floor hard, his head bouncing off the tile, and the knife rattled away into the dark. He wasn't dead. He was groaning, and his fingers were twitching as he tried to push himself up. "Get out!" I screamed, kicking the bathroom door open. I grabbed the girl by the arm of her raincoat and dragged her down the hall, right past the guy on the floor. We didn't run into the woods. In these mountains, that's suicide. We ran straight out the front door into the pouring rain and threw ourselves into my old Chevy truck. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the keys on the floor twice before I could get them in the ignition. I threw it in reverse, slammed the gas, and tore out of the lot, watching the diner get smaller in the mirror as we wound down the ridge. We drove straight to the sheriff's station 10 miles away in the valley. The deputies went back up there with 3 cars. By the time they got up the mountain, the diner was still dark and the rain was still coming down. They found the broken coffee mug on the floor and a puddle of blood in the back hallway where the skillet hit him. But the guy was gone. He'd crawled out the back kitchen door and disappeared into the thick timber and briars behind the building. They found his stolen pickup truck abandoned a mile down Route 219. Inside the glove box, they found 3 different driver's licenses. None of them were his. Ask any guy who works the late shift on Blackwood Ridge, and they'll tell you the same thing. If you see some random sedan parked on a dirt logging trail after midnight, you don't look back in your mirror when you drive off. You just stare at the yellow line and keep the truck moving. I broke that rule 3 years ago. It was November, right after a bad sleet storm dumped 4 inches of heavy slush over everything and chased out the last of the campers. The woods were dead. No wind, no owls, nothing. Just that weird quiet where your ears start ringing because it's too silent. I was sitting in the cabin drinking awful gas station coffee when the radio went off. Dispatch said someone dialed 911 from the old loggers trail, but hung up. The GPS pinged a stopped car. I figured it was just some kids from town who got their Civic stuck on a tree stump trying to slide around in the mud. I grabbed my coat and my big metal flashlight and headed out. The air outside smelled like wet dirt and rust. It hurt to breathe in. About a quarter mile up the fire road, my brights hit a silver car. It was jammed sideways into a ditch, the front end completely smashed against a boulder. The keys were still in the ignition because the weak little taillights were still on, glowing dim red in the snow. I parked behind it and left my lights running so I could see. Walking up, the snow was freezing and loud under my boots. That was the only sound out there. But when I got right next to the driver's side, my stomach dropped. The window wasn't busted inward. The glass was all sitting on top of the snow outside the car, like something blew it out from the inside. I shined my light through the empty frame. A young girl was slumped over the middle console, her hair all matted up with dark blood. "Hey, Ranger Service, you okay?" I slammed my hand on the roof. She didn't just jump. She let out this awful, empty screech and lunged straight through the window frame. Her nails dug right through my heavy jacket sleeves into my skin. She was shaking and breathing so hard her chest was rattling. Her pupils so big, her eyes looked totally black. She pointed down at the floorboards of the back seat.
"He's down there,"
she whispered, her voice totally shot.
"He didn't break in. He was under the seat when I got in."
Before I could even think about what she was saying, I heard a heavy thud in the brush about 30 feet to my left. I spun around, pulling my Glock and swinging the flashlight toward the noise. The beam hit the white birch trees, and then I froze. There was a guy standing hip-deep in the briars. He was just wearing a dirty flannel shirt and jeans. No coat, no boots, in below-freezing weather. But he wasn't shivering at all. He was just standing there, completely still, staring right at us. When I got the light right on his face, I couldn't breathe. His face looked wrong, like someone tried to draw a person but missed all the lines. His mouth was way too wide for his head. When he opened his lips, his teeth weren't pointed. They were completely flat and square, like a horse's teeth. "Ranger Service!" I yelled, and my voice sounded thin and terrified. "Put your hands up. Step out of the brush." He didn't move. He just took this long, rickety breath. When he spoke, the sound didn't come out of his mouth. It came out of the dark woods all around us, from 3 different directions at once. And he didn't have his own voice. He used hers. He said my exact words back to me, using her exact voice.
"Ranger Service, put your hands up."
Right then, I heard sirens down in the valley. The troopers were finally coming up the mountain because of that 911 call. The thing tilted its head sideways, like a dog listening to a whistle. Then its mouth stretched open into this awful, wide grin. It took 3 fast steps backward. It didn't turn around and run. It just slid backward into the dark under a massive pine tree and vanished. By the time I moved my light back to the spot, it was just empty branches. The troopers and the ambulance got there 5 minutes later. They took the girl to the hospital. She had a bad concussion, and her arm was broken from trying to hold the front seat down to keep that thing trapped under it. They looked for the guy. 2 K9 units followed a set of bare footprints for about half a mile into the woods, but then the dogs stopped dead. They started whining and backing away, refusing to go any further. The handlers said the tracks didn't go into a cave or across a creek. They just ended right in the middle of an open patch of snow. Like whatever made them just stopped existing. I quit the state job a month later. I live in a normal subdivision now, far away from any real woods. But every time it snows and the air gets that heavy, dead quiet, I go around and check my deadbolts 3 or 4 times. If you talk to any lineman or contractor who services the cell towers up in the high ridges of the Appalachians, they'll tell you about the dead zones. Not just the places where your phone loses service, but the valleys where the air gets so heavy, your radio won't even pick up static. The unwritten rule for the night shift is simple. If you're working a tower after midnight and the security lights go green instead of red, you pack your tools, get in the truck, and you don't look back at the tree line. I was working third shift for a regional telecom company, driving a heavy-duty bucket truck out on one of our mountain passes. A nasty ice storm had dragged a massive pine tree onto the main power line, feeding the transmitter up on Hemlock Mountain. It was about 3:15 a.m. The temperature was hovering right around 12 degrees, and the mountain roads were completely covered in a slick, black sheet of ice. I parked the truck at the base of the gravel access trail, right where the thick laurel bogs start. The silence out there was awful. No wind, no frozen branches snapping. Just that dead, hollow quiet where you can hear your own heart thumping against your ribs. I put on my hard hat, grabbed my heavy leather work gloves, and started walking up the steep trail with my big metal flashlight. The frozen mud cracked loud under my boots. It was the only sound for miles. When I got to the chain link fence surrounding the tower, my stomach dropped. The heavy steel padlock on the gate hadn't been cut with bolt cutters. The thick iron latch was bent clean in half, twisted backward like a cheap piece of tin. I shined my light inside the compound. The thick rubber cables running up the side of the steel tower were shredded. They weren't sliced cleanly by a knife. The heavy plastic coating was torn to ribbons, hanging down in long, ragged strips. "Hey, anyone up there?" I yelled out, keeping my hand close to the wrench on my tool belt. Nobody answered. But then I noticed the snow right under the generator shed. There were footprints. But they weren't human, and they weren't bare. They looked like heavy, blunt hooves, but they were spaced out like a person walking on 2 legs, heading straight toward the dark woods behind the generator. Right then, the radio on my shoulder mic buzzed. It didn't sound like dispatch. It was just a low, scratching sound, like someone dragging a heavy chain through the frozen gravel right behind me. I spun around and snapped the flashlight beam toward the noise. The light cut through the dark, hitting the pale trunks of the birches. And then it stopped. There was something standing right behind a thick oak tree. It was unnaturally tall, easily 8 feet, and its body was completely wrapped in what looked like heavy, rotting black wool coats, layered over each other until it looked twice as wide as a normal person. It didn't have a face. Where its head should have been, there was just a mass of tangled gray mountain moss and briars shifting around. The worst part was how it moved. It didn't step forward. It just leaned out from behind the oak tree, its body tilting at an impossible, broken angle, completely silent. "Get out of here! Go on, get!" I screamed, and my voice cracked completely. The thing didn't make a sound from its throat. Instead, it raised 2 long skeletal arms out from under those heavy wool coats. Its fingers were wrapped in old, dirty burlap cloth. It took a thick, rusty iron logging chain from its coat, and began slowly wrapping it around its own neck, pulling it tighter and tighter until the metal links groaned against each other. Then it stepped fully out into the open. It didn't run, but it didn't walk either. It moved with a jerky, hitching stride, its joints popping loudly in the freezing air like breaking branches, heading straight for the open gate. I didn't wait around. I dropped my flashlight, ran down that icy gravel trail as fast as my boots could take me, and threw myself into the cab of the bucket truck, my body shaking so violently I almost couldn't open the door. I slammed the truck into reverse, floored the gas, and tore down Hemlock Mountain, watching the dark tree line shrink in my mirror. I quit the telecom job the next morning. If you're ever up in those mountains, take my advice and never look back. If you made it through tonight's collection, pass it on to someone you want to keep safe, or maybe someone special you'd like to haunt. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next nightmare. Until next time, loves, stay safe and sleep well.